good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for today's Azure Sentinel security event. I'm Peter Richardson, and I'll be leading today's event. We're also really privileged today to have Stuart Aston, National Security Officer for Microsoft, as our guest speaker today. I'll be handing over to Stuart shortly to give you an opportunity to introduce himself. I'm sure in more normal times we've had a much more impressive venue for today's event, but today I'm coming live from my back bedroom in Farnborough, albeit a rather sunny, pleasant Farnborough today, so it could always be worse. In terms of my role at ANS, I'm a cloud solutions architect in our cloud and digital services team. I've been with the business now for a little over 7 years, so I feel I've got a really good understanding of the history of ANS, the way the business has been designed, and how we've got to where we are today. Previously, I've had a number of roles within IT, starting with Sun Microsystems Technologies, and you've probably picked up on the Farnborough link there. And then, like a lot of us, seen the industry through into x86, into virtualization, working my first VMware project in about 2005, and then through into converged infrastructure and private cloud, specializing on FlexPod and Microsoft technologies. And then in line with ANS in the industry, been working almost exclusively on hybrid and pure cloud-based solutions for the last 3 or 4 years now. In terms of my day-to-day role, I get asked a lot, both by colleagues at ANS, by friends and family, what do you do, Peter? What's your day-to-day job? And at that moment, I usually go, So to break it down really, really simply, I love to talk. Any of you who have met me will know I love to talk, especially around technology and evangelizing around the latest and greatest technologies. And I guess if you break my role down into its simplest form, it's designing solutions to meet the challenges of the organisations we support. So whether that's maybe exiting a data centre or a colo or a current IaaS provider, whether you're looking to build a new data platform, deploy a new app or refactor an existing app and migrate that to the Azure platform, or very much as we talk about today, designing next generation security solutions using Azure native tooling. In terms of the agenda today, I'm going to hand over to Stuart in a moment, who's going to take us through the kind of the security landscape and the challenge, if you will, overlaying on a little bit around Microsoft's approach to security and a bit of Microsoft's background playing in that space. Stuart will then seamlessly transition back to myself, and I'll talk around the Azure Sentinel suite in a bit more technical detail, covering log analytics as well, which obviously feeds into the Azure Sentinel solution. We'll also be looking at the deployment model, how you can go around deploying that, what those steps look like, what permissions you need, what the prereqs are, and then how ANS can help you on that journey if any support's desirable. Before I hand over to Stuart in just a moment, sorry, got a bit ahead of myself there. Just a little bit of housekeeping. If everyone could put themselves on mute, just to avoid any distractions as we work through the presentations today. We will be recording the event, so if you want to refer back to it or you want to pass it on to any colleagues, etc., the recording will be made available following the event. Any questions during the event, feel free to drop those into the chat. Stuart and I will do our best to get back to and answer all of those questions during the event. I will be honest, it can be quite hard to keep up with the volume of messages potentially. So we've kindly got Lily from ANS who will be managing the chat for us today, and she will be ensuring that Stuart or I or the wider ANS team get back to everyone to answer any questions and arrange any of the relevant follow-ups. So now we've got the boring side of things out the way, I'll hand over to Stuart to introduce himself and give us a little bit of an overview of security from the Microsoft world. Just stop sharing my screen. And over to you, Stuart. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you very much. Now I need to get my screen up. I thought you were running the slides, but never mind. That's my bad. Let me get my
apologies, Stuart. I've kept you on your toes there, haven't I?
Yeah, you have.
Do you want me to...
It's great. Why don't I introduce myself while I speak? I'm just going to get my deck up and present off that. Here we go. I'm Stuart Aston. I'm the National Security Officer for Microsoft in the UK. I've been working for Microsoft for 23 years. Most of that time has been in the, we call it the high threat space. So I've been working with government security customers around in the UK. Most of my work on a day-to-day basis is with the National Cyber Security Centre, and most of that time has been working to support government in their use. What I'm going to talk to you today about is a bit of an observation on where we think some of the challenges are that people face in cybersecurity. What Microsoft has done about that over time, where we and some takeaways about what you can do in terms of taking that forward. So let's get on to that. So security complexity is a fact of life, and it's almost an exponential growth, right? We actually start to plug systems together. We want to have them talk to each other, which is all fine because that's how our businesses get resolved. But actually, one of the things we're trying to do is, then bring security information together to actually ensure that that information is coherent, that we have an operating picture that matches the threats and our business as a whole. We see that as both a threat because that complexity, the very joins that we introduce to actually bring those systems together, actually introduces risk into the environment, as well as produces scenarios of people cross-decking information, which is incredibly inefficient. From what we've seen and the stuff that I see around the world, identity is a core battleground for attacks. Literally 99% of the attacks that I see have identity as a factor in them. And that's even in that high threat space. Identity compromise is therefore something that we need to all protect against. Cloud security providers are investing heavily in security. We have over 3,500 dedicated security professionals inside Microsoft whose sole job is to keep Microsoft safe and our services that we operate. We spend over $1 billion a year in cybersecurity. Conversely, the adversary is weaponizing the cloud. They're actually making use of the same investments that we're making to protect ourselves and our customers as an attack platform. And whether that's on my cloud or on another cloud, the reality is that's coming down. We see a massive skills shortage. And people with the right skills in the right job is a rare thing to begin with. In cybersecurity today, there's something between 2 and 3 million, let's call it 2.5 million jobs in the world unfulfilled. And whilst that's great from a feeling of job security for people like Peter and myself, ultimately, the issue is how can you do the most with that set of personnel in order to meet your commitments to have a secure system for your service, whatever that service might be. We're seeing targeted attacks not only by nation states, but also for monetization. This is a profit motive driven business. I mean, a couple of years ago, I was talking about this in the context of it being a multi-billion-dollar industry. It has only gone on from there. And I don't mean the sale of cybersecurity software. I mean the criminal business that runs as adversaries to us in everyday life. Cyber hygiene and legacy are two of the biggest threats that I see today after identity inside customer environments. Literally, I see people who have books on their shelves that they have not read in the form of software that can protect them from threats that quite literally I'm phoning them up to tell them that a nation state has attacked their organization, and if only they turn things on that they already had bought, they would be better off. So cyber hygiene, moving forward from legacy to protect yourself. The best thing you can say about an operating system, a platform, is it was designed to protect against today's threats when it was produced. And if you never update it, that becomes an appalling operating environment for you going forward. Security is a journey. When I first joined Microsoft, we had a password and an appalling security reputation. Today, we want to move people away from passwords. We invested in something called the Trustworthy Computing Memo, which is a memo from Bill Gates in 2002, which basically changed the corporate infrastructure and asked us to look at security as a primary driving factor. Out of that came something called the Security Development Lifecycle, where we actually engineer security into every component of our product. And from that very nascent start in 2002, we now have defenses across the entirety of the kill chain, utilizing those 3,500 security experts in 100 data centers around the world with 24/7 monitoring. leveraging AI from trillions of security events that we see every single day. Now, the vast majority of those events are managed in an automated way, and that tooling is one of the things that actually led us to Sentinel. And that's one of the things we want to try and do with Sentinel, is democratize cybersecurity so that everybody can benefit from those machine learning approaches, either as threat hunters or as defenders, to operate and manage and learn from others about their threat hunting experiences, which is one of the reasons we've got the tools and services on GitHub that we have in order to enable people to share that information. If you think about how Microsoft work, we've changed dramatically in the time that I've been with the company, when it was Microsoft right or wrong. Today, we are very inclusive in terms of our approach. And yes, we want our customers on our cloud platforms to be the most secure, the best that we can offer. But we embrace other cloud providers, in that with tools like Sentinel, we can take information from a variety of cloud provision and bring that all into one place, giving you a common operating picture across your clouds. We can also do that across multiple endpoints, and not many people know, or maybe perhaps more do today, that we have endpoints and protection on those endpoints across, of course, Microsoft, but Apple, Android, Linux, and even the IoT and the edge. But ultimately, where you get the benefit is bringing all that information into one place and then automating your responses. We have unmatched threat intelligence, and that comes from that trillions of events that we see across our platforms, as I'm describing here, our consumer platforms, our enterprise platforms, attacks on Microsoft itself, and of course, attacks on platforms that we have endpoint protection on. All of that information becomes included in something we call the intelligent security graph. We take that information across a compliance boundary and take it inside graph, so that we only hold the information that we need to be able to track and hunt threat events, where the data is then processed and turned into actionable intelligence based upon the analytics that we use inside our service. That is then propagated into each of the product services around the organization. And as you can see here, we use our own internal API to propagate that result set out, who then in turn generate their own data, which feeds back into the graph, which we then use human threat hunters, data scientists and others, to actually find attacks inside our organization that are attacking our customers, that are attacking our services, and use that to improve both product instrumentation and technical advancements in the products itself, and improve the analytics of that. And one of the things that Sentinel really does is help you have that same experience that we do across trillions of events, of trillions of signals every single day inside your own organization. I talk about security hygiene a lot, and I've been talking about patching probably since I joined Microsoft, sometimes not so effectively. But today I want to talk to you about just these 6 things, and I want you to take away with you. One is Secure Score. If you're using a cloud service, Secure Score gives you a really helpful set of initial points to go and think about how to move and forward with your security using our cloud services, and even coming to on-prem. Don't run as administrator. Wherever you possibly can, use the least amount of privilege that you can inside your organization for the minimum period of time in order to affect any changes inside your environment. Use application whitelisting, use app blocker to protect the applications that you want to run inside your organization, and positively deny these things to the adversary. In this way, you're actually controlling the attacker's ability to execute code inside your environment. Monitor. I was working one case actually this last couple of weeks, where a customer compromise took place, and they don't even have a SOC. They don't have one of the basic fundamental tools or anything that mirrors it today to actually work out what's going on inside their environment. So monitoring the environment starts to become key. Staying evergreen. We are making constant changes, not only to our cloud platform, to our on-premise tool set, and keeping those up to date is probably one of the most effective ways that you can operate in order to deny and an attacker a foothold inside your environment. I can't stress it enough. Stay up to date. Please stay patched. I don't know how many people have families here, but I know that I do. And one thing that I will ask you all as a plea from my daughter, really, to you, is to turn on multi-factor authentication wherever you're using authentication. This shouldn't be a burdensome event for the end user. I have MFA turned on my devices. I literally never see it except when I enroll that device into my cloud. But I know that any failings in my password strategy are protected as a result of that MFA implementation, because I know that unauthorized attempts to utilize my credentials will require a multi-factor authentication prompt to protect me. And quite literally, my week goes something like this. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I'm all doing internal stuff. Wednesday afternoon, I get a telephone call that's saying that somebody has been compromised. Wednesday afternoon, I have a telephone conversation with them to say, you need to turn on multi-factor authentication to stop the progression of this. Thursday morning, they go away and tell me why they can't do it. By Friday, they're talking about rebuilding their entire domain controller environment because they've had a compromise across their entire estate, and my weekend is now gone as a result. Please turn on MFA, do it at home, do it at work. And if you have to turn off legacy protocols to do that effectively, and you will, then do that too. With that, thank you very much indeed for your time. I'm really looking forward to seeing what Peter has to say. And with that, Peter, over to you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Stuart. Really appreciate that opening piece to today's event. So really appreciate that. Thank you very much. And some very wise words at the end there as well, which I can only mirror, Stuart. So thank you very much for that. So what we'll be doing for the next kind of half an hour, 40 minutes or so, is looking at a little bit more detail around the Sentinel suite, what those core components are, the relationship between some other services on the Azure platform, such as Log Analytics, and really articulating the value that organizations can derive from the Sentinel solution. So looking at a few of the key points, which are leveraged using the size and scale of the Azure platform, is a limitless speed and scale. When you go into a typical security solution with potentially a legacy vendor running it on an on-premise data center, you're back into the days of sizing hardware, how much logs are we collecting, what performance do I need? It's quite slow and you lack agility with that approach. One of the beauties of the solution is you can bring all your Office 365 data free of charge, which is obviously very, very appealing. Getting a lot of that identity management piece from an end user and user perspective and identity management, be able to spot user trends in terms of geographical login attempts, have they got two-factor authentication enabled, etc., and reporting on all of that user base. Got very wide integration with existing tool sets, as Stuart referenced earlier, whether it's his cloud or another cloud. We can ingest those logs, those signals, those metrics, and feed them all into Sentinel as your centralized security kind of management system. And ultimately, of all of the technology Microsoft have got at the back end, the threat hunting capability, I think Stuart mentioned 7 trillion events a day, if I call that correctly, that's leading to much faster threat detection. And the Sentinel suite, if we look over on the right-hand side of the slide, enables you to collect all of those signals and metrics. That could be from end user devices, that could be from your firewalls, could be from legacy services to the data center. We can collect those over Syslog, over API, over the Log Analytics agents, etc. I'll touch on that in a bit more detail. We can then go through to detect what is a threat and what is not a threat. Typical legacy solutions create a lot of noise, a lot of incidents. We don't always know what to do with those alerts and if those alerts are real and meaningful. So using that threat intelligence, the artificial intelligence at the back end, leveraging Microsoft's capability, we can home in on what is a real threat to your organization. Sentinel Suite then provides all of the tooling to investigate those, again, guided by AI. And then not only how to investigate them, but more importantly, how to respond to those and remedy that within the environment. We're going to touch on all of those kind of key parameters throughout today's event. As Stuart said, whether it's the Microsoft cloud, whether it's another cloud, whether it's a legacy security product you're looking to integrate, whether it's a traditional on-premise data center, The Azure Sentinel suite has got support for just about anything and everything. There's always a way, as long as a device will expose some logs, expose some metrics, some signals in one way, shape or form, we can collect those, pipe those into the Sentinel feed, into the Sentinel suite, and then we can start looking at the dashboarding, the threat hunting capability, etc. Again, in terms of unburdening security operations from IT tasks, and we saw from Stuart how the security space is short of talent. That means you're getting the best out of that talent, no longer having to manage hardware, patch, software devices in terms of operating systems, in terms of applications. It's a PaaS service on the Azure platform with essentially limitless scale. So it's really low stepping point, really easy to run a proof of concept, very low cost. Turn it on and start seeing the value you can derive from the solution. Obviously, with the 99% of Microsoft solutions available in the Azure portal, so really accessible. And again, you can scale that out automatically, no limits to compute or storage resources. So as you adopt the solution, see the value of it, you can onboard new devices, onboard new systems, or it might be that as you look to depreciate existing security solutions, as maybe support renewals come around, whenever you look to reevaluate your security tooling, you can pipe additional devices into the Azure Sentinel suite to derive that value the suite offers. Again, usage-based, that's the beauty of the cloud, on the kind of only pay for what you use. No upfront infrastructure, no upfront licensing costs, no kind of tendering process required. Very easy to get the Sentinel solution up and running relatively quickly compared to the more traditional solutions. And again, I just wanted to reinforce the value proposition from Microsoft of being able to bring your Office 365 data for free in terms of all of your logs, all of your Office 365 activity, and all of the benefits and the machine learning and learning user behaviors, and again, reducing those noisy false positives and giving you purely the alerts which are in a meaningful manner which you need to act on. So in terms of Microsoft playing nicely with other vendors and other cloud providers, etc., they have created pre-wired integrations with all of the Microsoft solutions, as you'd expect. And we've also then got connectors to many partner solutions. I'll take you through kind of an example of those shortly. And we've also got support, as I mentioned earlier, anything which will expose a metric or a log or a signal. We can collate those through a Linux-based Syslog server and also pipe those into the Office, into the Azure Sentinel suite. So looking at the top of the cloud over on the right, obviously your Office 365 data, you can bring that free of charge. We can bring in logs, signals, metrics from other public cloud providers. We can also work nicely with some of your traditional kind of vendors that play in the security space, the likes of Palo Alto and Fortinet with their offerings. Checkpoint, particularly in the firewall space, and then your kind of network vendors of choice, such as Cisco, and some of your other security partners, such as Semantics. We've then got the legacy security solutions as well. So whilst you might have a solution deployed, you might not be getting all of the capability of the Azure suite in terms of the threat hunting capability. So we can pipe all of those logs into the Azure Sentinel suite and give you that single source of truth and that single point of management for all of your security events. Following that round, as I mentioned, we've got support as you'd expect for Azure AD, all of your traditional on-premise data centers, whether that's hardware, whether that's operating systems, whether that's applications, and obviously over on the left, your apps, your users, and your infrastructure as well, all supported with the Sentinel suite. So in terms of the community effort behind it, and as Stuart referenced, I'm sure there's a lot of us with a lot of spare time at the moment. You can lose a lot of time looking at what others have built and made available on GitHub in terms of the dashboards and the workbooks, in terms of some of those threat hunting rules, the machine learning models, etc. So there's an awful lot of intelligence out there in the community to aid you with the deployment and with the development of the Sentinel suite as well. There's a huge amount of capability out there ready and waiting to be utilised. looking at how the artificial intelligence element really helps to bolster and set apart the Sentinel suite from some of the other offerings, and just revalidating what some of the things that Stuart said around it's based on decades of Microsoft security experience and learning. It's all the lessons learned, whether that's Microsoft in their internal data center, internal services to their own employees, or whether that's the solutions they're building and developing for use in the wider market. All those lessons have been learned over the years and kind of developed into the Sentinel solution. Looking around the circle on the right, we've got the pre-built machine learning modules. We've got a lot of off the shelf from Microsoft. You've also got a huge capability available on GitHub. The correlated rules, so we're correlating the rules to those machine learning models that all feeds into that threat detection and analysis. We're looking at the user behavior and doing behavior analysis. So what devices has a user got enrolled? Have they got two-factor authentication enabled, as Stuart referenced? Where is that user logging in from? Is it geographically possible that that user could have traveled between those two locations, between those two office addresses, between those countries, between those regions? Is that theoretically possible, or is there a potential breach of that user's account? And again, if there's not an off-the-shelf machine learning model from Microsoft or GitHub, you can bring your own and develop your own machine learning models and then tune those in-house to meet your requirements. One of the really nice features that some of the legacy, as I refer to them, security solutions are missing is the ability to visualize the entire end-to-end attack and the impact on your wider environment. What elements of the environment has someone touched? What could have been compromised? One, more importantly, so how do we remedy that, and then how do we prevent that going forward? So it's a really nice visual aid when you are dealing with the security alerts and how you go about remedying them, and it really sets itself apart in terms of that capability compared to some of the offerings, some of the other offerings out there in the market. Now, looking at those data sources and those mechanisms in a little bit more detail. So up in the top left, obviously full support for Windows Server. We can get all your security events, DNS, Windows Firewall, DHCP logs, etc. From the Microsoft services, we can get all of those alerts and metrics directly into the Sentinel suite. We've got API engines available for other public cloud providers. So again, full support for that multi-cloud approach. We've got that full end-to-end capability. Also got the REST-based API for some of the vendors such as Barracuda and Symantec. So if you want to query your firewalls, bring all your firewall logs in, etc. Symantec from an antivirus perspective and other security tooling, we can integrate that. We've then got the ability to bring just about anything in if it's writing a log in the common event format, i.e. your typical kind of syslog format. So you've got your vendors, your network vendors such as Checkpoint, your Fortinet, your Palo Altos, your Ciscos. Anything that exposes a log, we can take into a Linux Syslog server. Again, to ease that deployment and aid that deployment, there's even a one-click deployment for that Linux box, which you can deploy and configure from the Azure portal with a single click. And then we've got the Azure Log Analytics agent as well. So if you're already on the Azure platform, making use of the Log Analytics platform, you've probably got that agent deployed. That agent can pipe into Log Analytics and or Sentinel directly. And you can see a relationship down there with Log Analytics in the bottom right hand side of that image. That then leads on to the ability to start creating some dashboards and getting some of those visualizations around what's going on in your environment. This is an example of the Azure AD sign-in. As you can configure this dashboard, full role-based access, and give the relevant information to the people you need to act on that. Another quick kind of overview there of what the art of the possible is in terms of some of the dashboarding capabilities, in terms of the threat intelligence overview, and detailing what threats you've got, when those threats have occurred, kind of the latest threat indicators, and categorizing those by type as well over time. So now you're all sold on the solution, so to speak, and you're all eager to go away and start playing and seeing what value you can derive from the solution, how it can benefit from your organization. I thought I'd take you through the high level steps of deployment in terms of the access you require, how some of the tool sets bolt together, and how we can integrate some of those legacy products and some of your existing security products. So just a quick recap on the architecture before we look at how we go onboarding the various components. You can see everything from your on-premise, your private cloud or your public cloud can get piped in along with your Azure services as well. In terms of access, you do need obviously the relevant accesses to start configuring and building out the Sentinel piece. So in terms of your subscription access in the Azure portal, you will need the contributor role. In terms of configuring the Log Analytics Workspace in the Azure portal, you will need the Log Analytics contributor role. And at a tenant level, you will require the global administrator role of the tenancy in order to stream logs from your Office 365 tenancy as well. Excuse me. Once you've got all of that access in place, you will require a Log Analytics Workspace. Now, if you've got one in place today, we can use that. You can use that and pipe that into Sentinel. It's worth noting that as I speak today, only a single Log Analytics Workspace is supported. I think it's fair to expect that number to increase in the future. So you can use existing or a newly provisioned workspace. And if you're using Azure Security Center, it's aligned to best practice to use the same Log Analytics Workspace for both Security Center and for the Sentinel suite as well. In terms of creating that Log Analytics Workspace, obviously that's created through the Azure portal. You can click into all services. In the list of resources, if you start to type Log Analytics, it'll filter that down and become clickable on the right-hand side of the Azure portal. So nice and easy to find. We'll then look to verify the region you want to create the Log Analytics Workspace in. This would typically tally up to your production or one of your production regions. Imagine the audience that we've got today, that will heavily be UK South, UK West, potentially out in some of the European regions, but selecting that most relevant region for you, and then selecting the pricing tier as well. In terms of Log Analytics and the data retention, the default is to store that for 30 days, but you can tune that up to a maximum of 730 days should you need longer term retention. Bear in mind, you then do have options using other Azure tooling. I'm not going to go into those today to form longer term retention, but up to 730 days to do analytical queries against those logs within Log Analytics. You can adjust that data retention period to suit your business needs. So it might be a case of mirroring to an existing SIEM solution, or it might be a good opportunity to reevaluate your requirements and potentially up that retention period. And that's easier now that we've got obviously that limitless scale. You're not bound by hardware, you're not bound by how much rack space can I fit another disk shelf in, you're not bound by the performance you get out of your storage, how many logs you can write per day, etc. So you can really tune that to meet your business requirements, not what your infrastructure is capable of supporting, which we might have all been guilty of in the past. So in terms of that data collection, the Sentinel suite creates a connection to all of those services, apps, servers, whether that's the Log Analytics agent or by configuring a data collection source in Sentinel, i.e. through the API engine. The Log Analytics agent collects all of the logs and then streams those into the Sentinel workspace, so we can start doing the threat hunting, we can start doing that analysis of those logs. Two types of get my words out, of those Log Analytics agents, a bit of a tongue twister there. Obviously Windows support and then Linux support for all your common flavors and binaries of Linux as well. We then got firewalls and proxies along with other Syslog sources that can use the Log Analytics agent on a Linux Syslog server as well. I'll come on to that in a moment. And if you've got any devices which write in common event format, we can use the automatic deployment option. So that will provision that virtual machine with the Linux agent pre-installed, pre-configured, ready to deploy. So that's a really nice feature just to aid the quick deployment of the solution. You can also go through a manual install of the agents. I'm sure you've all got a kind of software deployment technologies, whether you've embraced System Center, whether you've looked at Intune. I'm sure you've all got mechanisms to push those agents out to your enterprise workloads. If we need to, and this is I guess the devil's in the detail of your network architecture, we've also got the OMS gateway as well. So if we can't have devices in maybe an on-premise or an alternative cloud solution, talking directly to the Sentinel suite, the OMS gateway in the simplest form acts as a proxy, centralizes all of those logs and then communicates directly with that Log Analytics Workspace. The manual agent install on the Windows VMs is really nice and easy. Nothing too complex there to worry about or to be scared of. Simply kind of follow the install GUI, input your workspace ID and your workspace key in terms of your Log Analytics Workspace. You will need to likely adjust a few firewall rules, all going out over port 443, so no strange and odd ports there. And down the left-hand side, you've got the details on the rules which would need to be configured on your traditional firewalls. That then takes you into the Sentinel suite once you've got all those prereqs completed, and we can start collecting data and getting to the cool stuff of the solution. So as I mentioned, wide range of data connectors. So up at the top there, we've got AWS. I never thought I'd see that on a Microsoft event. All of your common Microsoft things there. You can see the Barracuda in terms of application firewalls, checkpoint firewalls, Cisco ASAs, CyberArk and some of the other third-party security solutions supported. And then also your common event format as well. So as long as we can expose any logs from just about any device on a network, we can pipe those into the Sentinel solution. In terms of those different connected deployment options, you've got the direct connection option. So this is from within the data connector. So those logs are streamed directly to Sentinel. An agent on a Windows or Linux virtual machine configured to point towards the data connector. You've then got the Syslog Server approach. So this is for potentially some legacy devices, maybe some older firewalls within the environment, some older switches. So we can point all of those through the common event format, point those towards the Syslog Server with the Log Analytics agent installed. That will then forward all the logs on. Or you've got the direct API access for some of those other public clouds and some of the more modern vendors with that API available, such as the Barracuda web app firewalls as well. In terms of that direct connection with those data connectors, there's a few more examples there which I felt were probably quite common technologies amongst the audience today in terms of Azure AD, Office 365. You've got Azure Security Center, Azure Activity. I'm sure you're using, if you're on the Azure platform today, you've got some WAFs deployed, etc., and other threat intelligence tooling as well. You've got the Log Analytics agent as well, so that will get installed on a Windows or Linux virtual machine, and then that enables us to collect logs such as security events, DNS logs, firewall logs on those Windows operating systems. Very similar capabilities on a Linux box as well. We've then got the common event format as well. So just for any device that will expose some metrics, we'll look at the likes of the Cisco ASAs, Palo Altos and Fortinets. We can gather all of those logs through a Syslog server and then gain visibility and intelligence of those logs within the Sentinel product. We've then also got the API option as well for some of the more traditional vendors with better capability. So in terms of F5, Barracuda and Semantic, in terms of the API engines they've got available to expose those logs, metrics and signals to the Sentinel suite. So we can ingest those directly from those devices. Might also tailor your thinking and logic potentially to ease of deployment of traditional devices. If you are running a hybrid environment, you're looking to refresh some of your on-premise environment, it could be logical to use items which you get better exposure of those parameters to the Sentinel suite as well. So how can IANS help if it's not something you're looking to do in-house, you're looking for some additional capabilities, some additional consultancy? IANS have developed what we refer to as a Sentinel Accelerator. So this is a standardized kind of piece of work leading to really, really quick and rapid deployments and kind of giving you the opportunity to see, touch and feel the capability of the Sentinel suite. And that is demonstrated itself at a very, very low cost point. So it's really good for proof of concepts and pilots and enabling you to kind of explore your use cases and explore the value the Sentinel suite will offer. And obviously the beauty of this is it's all cloud-based, there's no hardware requirements. And you've seen the last kind of 10-15 slides or so just articulating how quick and easy it is to get up and running and configured and start collecting data and getting some meaningful data from the Sentinel product. Alongside that, for any ongoing development or any ongoing support services, we've also released, if it's not on our website today, it will be very shortly, a new managed services service definition tailored to the Sentinel. So we can offer you a managed Sentinel solution if you're not looking to manage it in-house. So we're looking at things like doing your data connector configuration, the onboarding and the offboarding of devices throughout the life cycle of the solution, the log forward deployment, again, for kind of any new devices, offboarding of devices. If you go for any mergers or acquisitions or consolidation of data centers, we take care of all that kind of BAU piece. We do all of the workbook configuration to give you the metrics you need to suit your organization, the format you need, and present that data to the right people at the right time. And as Stuart mentioned, the importance of monitoring the end-to-end solution as well. Now, conscious we are about kind of 5-10 minutes ahead of time. My contact details are available there as well. If you give the QR code a scan, it should take you to my LinkedIn profile. Again, feel free to drop me any messages or send me a connection request. Stuart's contact details were on one of his earlier slides. What I'll do is I'll flip back to Stuart's contact details and leave those on the screen, just to give you the opportunity to grab those if you wanted to have any further discussions with Stuart. And I think, Stuart, if you're open to it, I think we've got time for a few questions. So if anyone wants to unmute themselves, maybe if we take a couple of questions, Stuart, and see how we do for time.
Absolutely. If people just want to raise their hand using the raise their hand tool, then we can grab you.
So don't all rush at once.
Oh, awkward silence moment.
It is. I think we've got off lightly, Stuart.
Oh, we have. It's easy. We did have one question earlier on, which was about, which I answered in chat, which was about, the number of false positives being produced by geographical alerts because more and more people are using VPN. And of course, that's very true, right? An adversary can use a VPN to either mask themselves, or VPNs can mask the appearance of legitimate VPN users around the world. One of the options inside there is obviously to look at countries that your staff are just not likely to expect you to be in, and that kind of takes out some low-hanging fruit. Peter mentioned impossible traveler events, which are obviously still a thing. The other thing to think about that going forward, however, is that more and more attackers are using anonymized VPNs, and those are very different characteristics from just a regular VPN. So we're looking at the adversary using a deliberately anonymized VPN, and we can detect those and judge on those as well. Harry has a question. In the integrated products, I'm not sure if Microsoft Defender was mentioned. Is there any value in integrating Defender? The answer is yes. Yes, you can integrate Defender, and yes, there is considerable value in providing that additional signal into the suite as well.
Apologies, I didn't catch the name of the person who asked that question.
Harry
Defender. Yeah. Simply too many products, too much support to fit on a slide, so it's all readable. So I picked out what I felt some of the key enterprise technologies there. So apologies, didn't cover Defender.
That's absolutely fine, mate. I mean, it's a great product, but you know, you had to cover a range, so you know.
That might be one we can cover on another event, Stuart, another day.
That sounds like a good plan.
I'm conscious we've got a lot of marketing on the call today, so we'll get held to that now, Stuart. Cool. Any other questions? Conscious I can't see the chat at the moment. Lily, I'm not sure if any other questions have popped up at all, or Stuart, if you've got visibility.
I'm looking at the chat now, and no, we don't have any additional questions at the moment.
Cool. Well, in that case, looks like we'll get everyone.
Do you have any advice? Sorry, do you have any advice to people starting out creating workbooks? We had some feedback from Jay. Very good. Thank you. No questions though just yet. So Andy Lewis raised the question: do you have any advice for people starting out creating workbooks? Peter, what about you? Do you have any advice there?
Yeah, I think that's one that's probably worthy of a much more detailed conversation. So what I'll do is I'll ask Lily to grab your contact details from the chat, and let's get a follow-up arranged on that and get into a bit more detail. Then we'll be able to in the next few minutes or so.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. I'd probably look at GitHub as well as an initial starting point, as an idea of what it's possible to do. But for example, internally, our guys use the Jupyter workbooks to actually present threat analysis results, so that you know the high-paid help who don't understand what numbers are can actually understand what the problems are that we're addressing when we're doing threat hunting. So it's both a useful tool to as a playbook, but also as a way of presenting the information so that other people can consume it. So it can be very powerful. But do look at the GitHub examples that are already out there, I would suggest, and play with it, right? Because you know the worst thing that can happen is that you spend some time working out how to use Jupyter notebooks, and that's a really cool thing to do anyway.
Cool. Thank you for taking that one, Stuart.
No worries.
And we'll make sure we arrange a more detailed follow-up on that one as well to cover that in a bit more detail and explore some of the out-of-the-box workbooks and some of the capability out there.
We just got one last question from Harry. I think you probably get the virtual T-shirt. Obviously, we can't share a real T-shirt with you because of CV19 restrictions. But do you have any advice on alerts overload? The struggle stroke challenge is to make alerts meaningful.
Sounds like one for you, Stuart.
Well, so the answer is yeah. That's really what Sentinel is designed to help do, using the machine-based learning and the analytics that are available to actually normalize out those events that are otherwise troublesome, because the idea is to actually bring signal together from multiple sources to actually make meaningful intelligence that is then actionable as a result. But there will be some work required. I won't say it's free in terms of effort.
Brilliant. Thank you, Stuart. I think that's probably wraps up any final questions. A couple of follow-ups that Stuart and I'll make over the coming days, a couple of days or so. I think Lily's captured a note of those, so thank you very much, Lily. The event today has been recorded. So again, if you haven't managed to capture any contact details, I've left Stuart's on the screen for you now. If you want to refer back to it, share it with any colleagues, etc., it will be made available. I believe you'll all be getting the link emailed out to you. If not, it'll be on our website or similar. So we'll keep you posted on that. I'd like to thank you all for attending this afternoon, and a special thanks to Stuart for joining as our guest speaker today. Really appreciated, Stuart, and thank you very much.
No, thank you very much, and thanks all for attending. Get out, enjoy a bit of the sunshine while we still have it, would be my suggestion. But thank you very much for the invite, and thanks all for attending, and some really great questions.